Hi, from Pax Europiana. This is Günther speaking here from Kiev in the little bit improvised kind of video podcasting studio. I'm here in my hotel room, in my apartment, my small one, which I rented for this week of solidarity, which I devoted myself to support Ukraine in this crisis in 2022 because the Russian tanks are standing on the border in the north, in the east. Yeah? They are, of course, in the occupied Donbass already and in Crimea. The Russian Navy is there. So it's a very dramatic time. And that's also meant dramatically from the Russian side. I'm confident. Yeah. I personally believe the big war will not come because I want to believe in the good and in peace. But it's possible. It's absolutely possible. And that's why I decided to come to Kiev, because I have many friends here. I love this country. I worked 4 years here and I want to express my solidarity and I want to contribute as well to improvement and to find a settlement. Yeah. I made it very clear what I see as the settlement for this crisis to de-escalate it is the EU membership of Ukraine. I made a Courier, that's one of the main daily Austrian newspapers, commentary in Saturday, the start of my visit, in order to promote this idea. Seal it with the euro, get Ukraine in the European Union, obviously in 15 years, yeah, but now the EU potential candidate status. And based on that, we make a moratorium for NATO enlargement. As much as I like NATO membership, and obviously it will be the result of a war, because if Russia now fully escalates and sends the tanks and makes a military move, and a full-scale military move, it's fully capable of doing that, it will then bring NATO much more into this fight. Because in the beginning, obviously, America will not send troops, but America is the country when you challenge it, and also the British. And I say this also because everybody here on these YouTube videos talks only about the Second World War. You've seen what is happening when you challenge the West fully in this kind of extreme way. And the Germans and the Austrians have done it twice in history, and they failed completely. It was an utter disaster for the world, yeah. And you know, if you challenge America, the Russians have done it as well in the Cold War. It lives normally up to a big, very strong industrial, fiscal, and this kind of stamina they simply have. Yeah? So if America feels threatened by such a, and it will be by such a real war, it will help more and more. The bigger the war, the bigger the Russian aggression, the more America, the British and most Europeans, maybe reluctantly, maybe only financially, but they will supply and fund and equip Ukraine to the maximum. And how much territory Russia can additionally get, a country which is already the biggest in territory in the world? I mean, it's ridiculous. Yeah? They can maybe get one of the big cities in the southeast, yeah? And then they have a lot of population who doesn't want to live under Russian rule. Because the last 8 years they were seeing the Russians as enemies, yeah? Even in Kharkiv. Yeah? That will be very problematic occupational authorities from the Russian, not a liberation regime, occupation. So it's an utter mess. I don't know what they want. Yeah? My theory, which I will publish in the Austrian media very soon, is that Russia will not go for the big war, but they will go for a kind of a smokescreen, the whole operation is, and Russia will annex Belarus now. Belarus is the most likely case for annexation. It's also already a state union. They can easily maneuver now. Lukashenko will be the parliament president of the new state, the new federation of all Russia. He will go basically in retirement in Moscow. And then there will be this kind of possible also the annexation of the eastern occupied Donbass. Putin will say, I never wanted war, I just take what always was mine, and the West will also acquiesce with it more or less. But, and that's why I wanted to make this video, in case this Anschluss scenario is really coming. The big war is not happening at the moment. We have to act fast. Because as much as I'm for the Cypriot scenario, I am really in a kind of a reconciliation also with Russia. I am very much for NATO membership of Ukraine in case of Anschluss of Belarus and of the Donbass. Because then Russia basically has integrated Belarus, the eastern Donbass, the occupied parts of Donbass of Lugansk and Donetsk, and Crimea. That means basically 3 different parts of Ukraine and Belarus of the Soviet Union. Russia has brought Heim ins Reich after the example of the big bad guy in the past. Yeah? So that will be then the continuous strategy. And the buck has to stop there. If the Anschluss is coming, NATO membership has been of free Ukraine. Of course, that's basically without Crimea and without Eastern Donbass. But that has to be the consequence. If they break the international law again, the Russians, by this Anschluss scenario, the double annexation, immediately we have to resolve long-term the situation and integrate Ukraine as it is at the moment without the occupied territories into NATO first, introduce the euro to make it very clear everything, and also have the Western German integration as the role model. Of course, Ukraine has to make some constitutional changes, has to accept division for now. I explain as well, it's not forever. Western Germany has never given up on the idea of unity. It was a constitutional obligation for the politicians to strive for unity, but they learned to live with this GDR style. And also Ukraine has to live without these occupied territories, not formally, but in reality, because otherwise NATO membership is impossible, because we cannot be a tool for reconquista. So it must be clear that there is de facto division of Europe, not like it was in the middle of Europe, in the middle of Germany, and along the Austrian borders, and along Yugoslavia in some sense, like in the past, in 30 years ago, but the division of Europe goes along the Finnish-Russian lines, the Baltic-Russian lines. Belarus is on their side, Donbass, it cuts in two, Crimea is on their side, that's also Abkhazia is on their side, South Ossetia is on their side, but Georgia and Ukraine, the 3 parts, they can join NATO, and then the European Union, already sealed by the euro as the currency. And this de facto division, this reality, accepting the reality of the new Cold War, is what I propose. What is the result? It's not for me to propose, it's not that I propose it, it is the better way than allowing them the annexation, punishing Russia then by additional sanctions, and also then not integrating the countries into NATO, because that would mean Russia got away with Belarus and with Eastern Donbass and Crimea, and they got some minor punishments which they rarely care, and then they will have obviously then the appetite for more parts of Ukraine later. So no, in the moment the Belarusian annexation comes, there must be the answer that is NATO integration, and that can be done very fast. Yeah? It's not so complicated. Ukraine has to make the constitutional changes and the political establishment, NATO has to take them in, but this can be done in this Biden mandate. And this is a 1.5 years process, maybe ratification takes a bit longer, but there is the Madrid NATO summit in the summer, there will be the basic decision taken for the integration of Ukraine, free Ukraine only, only the non-occupied parts. I want to express my solidarity with the people living in Crimea, especially the Crimean Tatars and the people living in Eastern Donbass, but with them less, because many of them have chosen, not voluntarily maybe, but after 8 years they have not left. Many had no chances maybe, but in a way I would like to say it like this, yeah. It's all a complete tragedy, but it's not our choosing, blame Putin on that. And our leverage is we should then have a commission in the Council of Europe for the Russian annexed territories, yeah? Because Russia is a member of the Council of Europe, yeah? And actually Belarus is not, because of the, so actually the basic legal protection of the Belarusians after they have not been member of the Council of Europe and after they have basically been suppressed completely under this rogue regime Lukashenko who has since 2020, because it's lawless, it's no legal authority in a way, because he has abused and abused the electoral system, manipulated it. So what I say, this council working group in the European Council should then have a very clear situation in the way that the human rights in the occupied and annexed territories in Crimea in the Donbass, part of Russia then, of the Russian Federation, not legally, but de facto, they should also apply, obviously, the human rights protection in Belarus, in the occupied territories and in Donbass, and we must put Russia on a notice. They have broken all the international norms, but they can stay in the Council of Europe, but they have to keep the rules of the Council of Europe, human rights and democracy and all other, what they theoretically only keep in Russia, but to some extent, yes, they have to also apply in the annexed territories. So we have some kind of OSCE process, like the Helsinki process. This is the leverage then what we can do for the people in Crimea, for the people in occupied Donbass and in Belarus after annexation. But our main priority is to get the 40 million Ukrainians into the European Union as fast as possible with massive support and with also the necessary kind of instruments and actions. And that is what I think we should do. And this is what we have to make sure that we are able to act when it's now coming, because what I want to avoid in a way, and that's why I've written also the next article, which I also will launch now in the Austrian media, is that we are surprised because in just a few weeks it's very highly likely that Russia will do exactly this. Not go for the full war, and he will say, I avoided the war, the West was provoking me, but just getting in these territories and Belarus into the empire, into the Russian Federation. And then that will be then the big surprise and we will not know what to do. But I say we should exactly know what to do, and that is obviously at the moment of the never breaking of the international law. It should be the moment where we have this moment of clarity to integrate Ukraine in NATO. That can happen very fast. So what I say additionally, we have to ask all the European politicians in Finland, in Germany and in Austria to resign from the boards of the Russian corporates and all the think tanks and all these links to Russia, all these bridges. Obviously the most famous case is Mr. Schröder, the former Chancellor, who is even now rewarded with the third board, not only Nord Stream, not only Rosneft, that's already the biggest petrol company of Russia, and with it of the world, one of the biggest, and now he gets the Gazprom board as well. That's huge, That's even extraordinary for Russian conditions. And he gets it in because he controls Olaf Scholz, because he is his mentor and his political protege, who is now the Chancellor. That's why the Germans are down, calm, and don't criticize Russia. And so that's basically the reward for Schröder. So in Finland it's quite similar, but I don't know the Finnish situation very well, but I read that all former Finnish prime ministers are on some Russian boards. I cannot verify that, but I was reading that on Twitter and I think it's true. I checked some of the articles, but I don't know the situation. But I know the Austrian situation very well. I know that Wolfgang Schüssel, the former prime minister of the Christian Democrats, he is serving at Lukoil. That's the third largest energy company of Russia. For Austria, they have not Gazprom, not Rosneft as well. Mrs. Kneißl is on the Rosneft board with Schröder. She's the former foreign minister, famous for waltzing. And Christian Kern, he was also the prime minister after Schüssel then. He is, recently before Kurz, he is an expert for railway, and the Russians invited him for the Russian railway to sit on the board. Obviously, in no case the Russians want to have supervision or they want to have competent people that they are competent, but the Russians know how to do gas business and railway business themselves. They don't need Austrian former politicians for that. They are only buying influence, and that's basically corruption. And we have these three big cases. Additionally, the former chancellor, Mr. Gusenbauer, is a consultant very much in big business in Central Asia and in Russia. And who gives him this contract? They all have to resign. That's what I call the Council Republic. It's called the Soviet Republic Austria. Soviet means in Russian, it's a play of words. Soviet means council. That's Räterepublik. That's how we call the Soviet Republic, the Räterepublik. I wrote an article, a polemic about that one. But the reality is that we have these four big persons in Russian pay. And additionally, we have the so-called Sochi Dialogue Forum. It's an official state-to-state think tank, a kind of rapprochement, appeasement platform, where they then go to the Valdai Forum and there's common meetings and they do this schmoozing around in the high level with Deripaska and others. Yeah? And that's, of course, with the representatives of OMV, with the Chamber of Commerce, with Leitl, with Kopf, with Schenz, and all the big men of the last 30 years of Austrian economic politics. Yeah? And it works always like this. You get invitations, you get big speaking slots, you get a speaker fee, and basically you are like, in this corruption language, they feed you. It's this kind of starting thing. When you are, of course, more important, like Leitl, then you get a mining concession. Yeah? It's easy. You have a business in Russia, legitimate, you're fine. But how did you get the land? How did you get the concession to have a mine? How did you get your, the electricity, what price you pay? What is your kind of regulatory environment, which is so important for every foreign investor? I know that very well. I do this as a living and that's my job actually. So many things depend on the regulatory environment, on the public utilities, on the water fees, on the electricity fees. And when you are a political opportune investor, and only those exist in Russia, and then you get it very cheap, and then you are very competitive, because you don't pay for the electricity, or some local council forgets some taxes, yeah? They don't send it to you because you are the friend of Putin, or you have made a press conference against sanctions, or you invited Putin on the red carpet to Vienna, you are such a great friend, then you get, you need to expand your mine, or your, like your shutter place, or whatever that is, yeah? Then you get it, no problem, yeah? You want to have a bigger, no problem, you take the land of the neighbor, no problem, because you're a friend. That's how it works ultimately in authoritarian regimes. That's very lucrative. Or for example, you are a gas trader, that's how it works in Ukraine all the time, yeah? You are in the gas trading business like Firtash, for example, yeah? There's no need for an intermediary, but it's an invented intermediary to get this access that you get only on political preferences. That's how they funded it in Italy, for example, this Lega Nord, yeah, a famous deal. You get a contract on some energy business, you are suddenly the the one who gets a commission on a 30 million euro deal or something like this. That's all very lucrative. And then basically these politically connected businessmen who are all maybe in politics already, they have their standard way to fund their parties already because they are very good friends. Nobody can really know that. And that's how all countries in the world work. You have always politics and business, and they are like friends linked on a long time, and they have found a way to support each other, whatever kind of way. And then you see it round around how it works. And that's obviously the way these things are organized. Yeah? And then you don't have to ask any more questions. But this system has to come to a stop. The buck stops here. When the Russian tanks are rolling and the Austrians are hiding behind Putin, that's not the EU. We are the political union, the European Union. Together we have voted in 1994 for joining a political union. You cannot then make your separate peace agreement on the back behind Brussels with Russia, make a lot of money, and then say in Brussels whatever you don't want to hear. It doesn't matter because we anyhow have Gazprom link with OMV and we get Siberian oil fields in order to be a little bit softer and to always somehow say no sanctions. Okay, if you wanted Germany, but we are not really happy. And then Russia say, yeah, that's too much sanctions. Yeah, it's always Angela, she's pushing us. What we shall do? Give us gas. And Orban is the worst. He gets it even very cheap because Russia always gives them the gas prices, like in Serbia and in Hungary, much cheaper to the countries which are compliant with their political wishes, or even do some nice veto against Ukraine, which Orban regularly does on all NATO questions and all EU questions. Whenever it's about Ukraine, hidden behind some Hungarian minority issues, they always then make a veto, and Russia gives the gas cheaper. Same logic is in Serbia. They got recently, I think, 25% of the gas price from Moldova. Moldova got a high price because they voted for the best. Serbia is a Russian proxy, gets it 25%. This is the reality. And that's not really very good, I think. Nobody can think that's really good. So what we need to do is to buy energy together. One buyer principle. All the gas, all the uranium, all the coal, all the petrol is bought by the DG Energy or build their own commission agency for that if you want. And they buy centrally the gas and the oil because there's only one buyer, there's only one seller, and then you have a certain market power, you have much less corruption suddenly. Maybe there's also some corrupt officially but in Brussels, but it will be much cheaper than Orban. And you have the same price everywhere, you have the same quality, quantity, you have rationality in that thing. Yeah? And that's, of course, there will be a lot of criticism, centralism, but we have decentralized corruption and inefficiency now. And it is not that I want to say in all aspects and for all situations, but on that one, when you have only one seller and he's exploiting our divisions politically with a bad agenda, we have to have unified energy purchases and avoid all these political corruption deals, which all prime ministers in Europe, in some way or the other, at least are informed and at least are looking away, but they know, and some of them even benefit directly or indirectly via their party or their politics or the think tanks and so on, because the Russians always give some kickback on this, who secures their take off of these energy supplies is getting some benefits. And that if you don't believe, you can read the protocols of the Orange Revolution Ukrainians who gave interviews about it, and I read all of them, and they have said that exactly, and I trust them because they were reporting directly in the Ukrainian media, translated in English from the telephone calls of Medvedev, and that's my source of information. And I think it's very credible because that's how it works ultimately in the Eastern energy business. And I think there is no doubt that this is actually effective. And when you look back at the European party politic history of the last 20 years, you will find many occasions where that explains a lot of the shifts, because if one party didn't accept the money, then suddenly the opposition money was flooding in money. Like in Hungary, you see the shifts between Jobbik and Fidesz, and then you can easily deduct it. And in Austria, it was certainly like this. And that's why I call for a European Parliamentarian Inquiry Committee into the Russian party political funding of the last 15 years. And let's see what's getting out. There's a lot of expertise. There's this Russian funding of Brexit. There's this Italian connection, the French connection. And let's discuss it on the table. Many will not like it, but that's the way to clean up European politics from Russian influence. And I think if we take ourselves serious as European Union, NATO, and all together as Europeans, as serious people, we should do that and we should clean up the mess. But first of all, let me conclude. Solidarity with Ukraine. Let's go, let's come, let's visit. It's absolutely safe here. It's a nice place, and I recommend you to come. And thanks a lot for your attention. I made a lot of videos in one podcast. I made, I think, 15 videos today about various parts of the city to show you, and I'm looking forward. I hope you enjoy, and I hope it's interesting for you. My hotel room, maybe less, but in the evening I can talk, I think, clearer and better to understood. And also I can explain you what I'm doing in the media in Austria at the moment, and I'm trying to somehow build a case for EU membership here and support Ukraine in whatever capacity you can. Thanks a lot for listening. More to come from Pax Europiana. Thanks for subscribing. Bye.